All right, here we are still at Wellington's victory. The Anglo-Allied army is almost completely gone. We're at, what? At the 5 p.m. turn, I guess. The French beginning to deploy in multiple lines of depth to prevent the Prussians from being able to hit them too hard. A lot of that being a matter of there's just not room for more troops in this narrow frontage, as well as the desire not to lose points. So I'm going to demobilize these units, and they've kind of gotten to where I want them. And if somehow the Prussians break through and do not completely demoralize the French army in doing so, I'll be at least close to some other defensible lines. It's also possible if I decide to try to withdraw and do a fighting withdrawal of some sort. I don't know if that really helps me, because that'll extend the line. The Prussians have a higher morale right now, and I think my best hope is to stop them here and try to play out a delay of game. But there's a lot of game left. We're on turn 32, but we started on turn 11, which means let's see. I'm trying to think what that means. 11 to 50 is 39 turns, and 32 out of 50 is 18 turns. So, you know, we're a little over halfway through the battle, and we saw what sort of, how quickly the armies fell apart, both the Allied army and the French army, under heavy fire, under heavy combat circumstances. So I think there's something that doesn't feel accurate about how fragile these armies are. This is a period I had mentioned before. This is where the Pleasanton scenario starts, which I think starts with the French up here facing the Prussians. They were still fighting the Anglo-Allied. They never broke them historically, and they were not broken. Now, it's possible I conducted a more violent battle than the historical one across more of the battlefield. I'm not completely disputing that possibility, although I know there was fighting here and here. It may not have extended all the way out to La Haye, and it may not have involved the Anglo-Allies coming down and having a relatively successful counterattack against the French left. But that feels like it doesn't feel like. So if the Allies aren't supposed to, if the reason that the Allies can't launch a successful counterattack is because, we're trying to keep in the game for longer. Well, I mean, the French would have come around, they would have surrounded the Hougoumont and been able to hit the flank here, just as they were able to roll up the flank here. So I think that Anglo-Allied, the forces that got committed there, more or less had to get committed. So then the thing that I did differently is Napoleon went across the field and had attacks being launched everywhere, as opposed to in a more limited portion of the battlefield. And that's just what you want to do. You want to do something that's ahistorical. And that just wins you the game or gives you a better chance of winning the game, simply because, well, it gives you a chance of defeating the Anglo-Allied army. And it just doesn't feel right in a lot of ways. I feel like the whole army morale system isn't holding up to producing historical play for the reasons that are believable and whatnot. If instead, and again, this is a matter of me not knowing Waterloo well enough, Napoleon did attack across the entire front, the casualties the effects on the morale are way too high, because the French army is not in great shape right now. They might get broken by the Prussians, but the Anglo-Allied army just got smashed. This is one of the problems when you come up with subsystems, right, that are detailed and trying to reflect something. The army morale is meant, and as far as I can tell, to reflect fatigue and actual shaking of the army. And, you know, to whatever degree it does that correctly or whatnot, the way it fits into how you actually win the game doesn't quite work well, right? But if it's showing the armies as being too fragile, that is just an element there. I mean, you know, the battle was not going to be decided by winning the Hougoumont, right? The battle was going to be decided by by defeating one of the armies. And the Hougoumont might be a key towards doing that, but you might be able to avoid it. Anyway. It's Thanksgiving. I think it's a little after 1. I gotta be there at 4. Everything, my food is packed away and ready to go, but means, well, they start eating at 4, so I gotta get there earlier than that because things need to be nuked or something. But I'm gonna try to squeeze in the remainder of this turn. Oh, geez, I've got dice over there. I've got this over here. Where am I? Fuck. I think I keep forgetting the dice. I think that's what happens. I don't think I would have left this lying here, but I'm not sure. Here's why. In fact, I'm sure that this is the beginning of a turn because I did not pay any costs and we're on an hourly turn. So I just didn't bother moving this, which is really a problem. All right. That means the French are going to pay first, then they get to demobilize some units. Demobilizing is hard to indicate. The way the rules are written, you don't take the leaders off the map. That doesn't make sense. There's just no way to indicate whether a unit's mobilized or not. Like, they should have like a command sheet or something if that's the case. So the only way that I can do it is to remove the leaders from the map, and that's kind of problematic because damaged leaders have to be differentiated from undamaged leaders. So, you know, I'm putting them back in the counter tray, the guys that I've removed, facing the way they're supposed to be. But it's just, it just feels kind of, I don't think the battle is supposed to get to the point where you're demobilizing troops. But on the other hand, that's one of the things that maybe I could have saved some points on was, you know, pull units out of the battle that are getting fatigued or getting really beaten up and take their point, you know, their point every, 4 turns away. Yeah, I don't think that's going to have much effect on the intensity of the amount of points that I'm losing. Moreover, I just didn't find myself in a position where it was easy. Like, you might be able to pull a unit out towards the end of its lifespan. But that would let you save like a point off of the entire morale thing. I have to do the rest of the command stuff, which really comes down to possible cav charges. The only place I have cav is across here. This guy can't see this guy. He's not going to be able to see behind him either, I think. Can't see this guy because he's on the downslope. But, and again, I don't know that those are the rule. I'm pretty sure those rules still apply in the Wellington's Victories rules. If they don't, they've screwed something up. Because if we were on the same level, we wouldn't be able to see each other. So I shouldn't be able to see him just because I'm lower than the crest of his hill. Which means these two can see these skirmishers. That will enable me to declare a charge here. And this guy can see the skirmishers, but that doesn't help him. Could see this, which also doesn't help him. So the way he's seeing, oh no, it's got to be in his charge zone. It's got to be the leader has to be in his charge zone that he's getting the information from. Yeah. So this guy can't charge. I could launch a couple of charges with these, and they can go over the hill just because those skirmishers are poking their heads out. So that's a possibility. Kind of hard choice with the cav charges because they're going to increase the intensity of the battle, essentially. You know, I'm throwing the cav in, and it's going to shock attack, and that's going to cause losses on both sides. And I'm down to 60 after I pay for the turn. However, it also breaks up the opponent's attack and slows it down and decreases the intensity in that fashion. So, yeah, I don't know. I just don't know. But I'm doing them because it feels right. You know what I forgot? I forgot to check for... I'm sure my morale is good enough. The Prussian ones, it's not. Yeah? They could both fail. Fuck! Okay, let me make my checks. Alright, they both succeed. 20 points this turn, but I managed to knock 10 commands out. So next turn it'll only be 10 points. That's going to help my situation a great deal. Not everything demobilized. I've still got reinforcements streaming in up here. I couldn't demobilize over here because these stupid fuckers. I want to demobilize this shit. Nope, can't do it. Yeah, so that's kind of one of the problems. But this big line here, the cav, these guys over here, was all able to drop. Oh, there's some cav over there I don't think I got. Just, they're not doing me any good. Oh no, these are the cav I got. Yeah. Part of the problem is they've got leaders still kicking around on them, not the unit leaders, but rather the higher level. Those I'm not removing. I don't think that they would be removed. You've got a situation where like Uxbridge starts out on the map for the Allies and doesn't have activated troops, I think. And it's like, well, okay, but he's there, he can run around and activate his own troops. So I think that's the same kind of situation where that commander is still active, but he's not counting anything against your morale level. Now I do the rally, and that's all I can do. I'm really kind of worried about time, just because that I stress tremendously about time. Here it is, Saturday, I guess about midday. I made it to the Thanksgiving. everything worked out okay there. Over 8. And I don't know if it was the fatigue of going out 2 days in a row, shopping and then Thanksgiving thing, or being sociable, or eating, but I ended up totally wiped out and sleeping for like more than 12 hours. I think close to 14. Getting up about the last possible moment I could have gone dancing and not going because I didn't feel too hot and I was still feeling wiped out and everything. And then I actually got a decent amount of sleep again, and I think I'm gonna go back to bed. I don't know what it is. All I want to do is fucking sleep. But I figure let's get a little bit of this in. I have done the French Command and Rally. That means I get to the Allies. Oddly enough, I wore the glasses I wear for the game. I forgot to take them off when I came up here outside, which I have not done before. I've worn them downstairs a couple of times, but nothing bad happened to them. But yeah, that would have been horrible if I went dancing with these, because sometimes they fly off my face, but mostly they just get a lot of sweat and I have to clean them and everything. That'll ruin the finish on them. It did on the past one. All right, so yeah, let's move some Prussians and of course get what we can off the map. This is also the hourly turn, so what does that matter? It doesn't yet, because we already paid the price for the French. Really all the Allies off the board at this point, which means the price in victory points is going to be much, much lower next hour. But when I get over here to the Prussians, things are kind of complicated. These charge zones I laid down, I think from these 2 units, yeah. I've got a cav unit here that helps defend, but I've got a lot of difficult choices to make here. So like these skirmishers, I could try to run away with them a little bit, get behind the cav, have it protect me, but I think one of the cav units is still going to be able to hit something. So I may just give them a significant number of options unless I can get another cav unit into place up at the front. If I can get a couple of them there, I can kind of neutralize this, but then I kind of lose some of my advantage unless I'm very careful, like moving up to the edges here. Another problem is there's artillery here. Now I can slip in against that. For what that's worth, I don't know. I don't want to create a dense, I don't want whatever's absorbing the cav to have another line behind it, because if the cav attack is successful, it'll just plow through and just keep hitting units. Further complicated, like I was talking about getting up to this hill line here, or elevation change, and yeah, but that would open up opportunity charges, which have their own problems coming at them. I'm not quite sure what the impact of that is. So like, if I move up my cav up to here to help protect better, or if I leave this hex, whatever I do, there's a possibility of an opportunity charge. Now this cav's not committed, so if it opportunity charges, that doesn't cost me anything. But I think an opportunity charge by these would negate the charge that I'm going to make. I'm not sure. Wow. I'm going to have to peek at the rules, but I don't think they cover this well. I see why. I think Navy versus Wellington does this differently. Remember, they separated out counter charges, opportunity charges as two different things. But here, opportunity charges only take effect during the shock phase, which means if I opportunity charge with one of these, it's sort of done its shock combat. There's kind of no reason to do that. But if I opportunity charge with this one, I would have to put a marker on it, I guess an extended line to indicate what it's hitting or whatever, to indicate that it's generated a charge that has to be handled during the shock. So I don't really have to actually worry about opportunity charges for my cav units. I do have to worry if that skirmisher wants to move, though. The Prussian movement coming out of the woods is this slowly developing mess, right? But my skirmishers were able to provide cover, so I came out of those hard cover locations here, trying to bring some infantry around to this side, well, to anchor on the stream. In case the cav doesn't do fantastic things, the infantry will come up to follow up. But the biggest problem is these guys back here, just ever so slowly moving forward, because the limitations are they have to stay on the road until they're 10 hexes from the enemy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which is to about here. A lot of the units are only 3 movement point units. Once they're within 8 hexes of the enemy, they can't use road movement, so they have to pay the terrain costs, and there just isn't room to get everybody forward like at the speeds I want to. So this gap is appearing between the deployed units and the ones that are slowly muddling their way through the woods still. And that's going to put us to the shock combats. I have some interesting options here where I might end up... What happens if I shock a skirmisher? Well, we thought it was horrible before. So this is going to have a 2 morale, so it's at -3. It can't. It will get disordered. So none of my units, you know, the skirmishers are able to move up right up against me. Now the only reason I'm doing that is to provide cover so that I can push other units up closer, although that's not really happening here. I should have probably held some of these back a little bit. I think I'll do that. Because that opens channels for artillery fire to go through without having to hit the without having to target the skirmisher. Yeah, the skirmisher's at close range. Problem, of course, oh, this skirmisher will force him to fire at it. Okay, I guess that's enough cover. I'm not sure. We may lose another gun crew doing this. Having 2 skirmishers up there, yeah, let's just do this. It's safer. But the artillery fires first. Yeah, let's do this. Having 2 skirmishers up there ensures that this skirmisher is pretty much not going to fire at either of the artillery, because I won't have wiped out both of those skirmishers because of the way the ordering of fire goes. But now we're on shock. We've got 2 cav charges we have to make. Skirmisher versus skirmisher. Look, at best we get a 0 table hit, which is not particularly good. And we might get picked off coming in, so that also is not particularly good. I don't want to trigger this, although, yeah, he actually is not going to get charged. So anything that gets charged has a counter-charge possibility. Perfect. So let's get to the charges. Charges were a mixed bag. The first French cav hit and was countercharged, or was not countercharged by this guy, I guess. No. Oh, under here, whoever's under there, and broke him, but just sort of a bounce result. Both would be disordered, but the French get their, you know, advance and whatnot. But The second, and that's because that was crappy Prussian cav. There's like 2 Moralk Prussian cav. There's also 5 Moralk Prussian cav. Decent stuff. And this was one of the decent ones. Which was able to hit this unit, which did countercharge and ended up getting routed by the countercharge and pushed back. Actually, there were 3. Actually, it hit this unit, plowed into it, was going to hit this unit, so it countercharged. Both made countercharges, actually. But this one got bounced off. This one, though, ended up getting hit with a rout result. But these guys got a D1, which threw them back as well. So, no, that was a D1, not a DR1. The attack had to be here. Let me see, I would have been, I think I'm, well, facing actually doesn't matter because I'm disordered. So yeah, so now I'm going to get a face full of infantry fire from that. Okay, well that's great. Speaking of which, that'll put us on the reciprocal fire phases, first the artillery, then the infantry. And there's a little bit of both. Got something, which is you got to fire at the closest unit. So I had to plunk the damn skirmisher anyway. It's okay. Also wasn't clear to me whether or not I have a shot here. I'm going over the crest of the hill. But I think the descending slope rules by the game would allow this shot because I don't have 2 hexes. So running this way, this guy's got the descending slope within 2, but this guy doesn't. I think that's meant to show that these slopes are very gentle and that I can shoot over in general. So I'm going to go with that, even though I'm trying to think if that fire would be allowable. Yeah, that fire would be allowable under the CWB system because you don't have anything like the descending slope rule. You sort of do, but it's that if I'm on one side of the high point of the hill and you're on the other and at a lower elevation, I can't see you. And this game doesn't handle, this game's rules don't handle that circumstance, but they do handle a circumstance that CWB does not with the layer cake concept, which is that 2 people at the same elevation level might not see each other because the crest of the hill is high enough above them that they're on this much more gently descending slope, but you know they just can't see over that high point, even though there's no ridge line or anything. And that's what's intended by that rule. So I'm going to stick with that, and that'll allow me a shot at, I guess, this unit. I could have taken a shot at this unit no matter what, because I'm on the higher side in comparison to that. But that's got soft cover, and I don't necessarily want to shoot at that. Side's kind of suffered from the fire combat. Let me see. So a French router here. They had some strength points picked off otherwise, but I think the Prussians suffered worse. Their skirmisher line routed. It did a rout through, which caused issues, and that sort of center that came through here ended up pretty much breaking up. And then, you know, we've got this is all not in great shape either from wandering out of the woods. So we get a lot of ugliness happening on the Prussian side as they try to come forward. points-wise, I actually think the two sides kind of got equal casualties on one another. I'm not sure, but we'll see what the totals are after the Allies do their command phase. I need a break, of course. But yeah, I'd come up and do a little something before I nap. I'm gonna go back to sleep for a couple more hours, whatever. But I did the Allied command and rally. Prussians in slightly better shape, one routed unit running off into God knows where. But these skirmishers coming alive, I don't know, I just like facing things. They have all around facing, so it doesn't matter, but I like facing things towards the front. Most of the Anglo-Allieds off the map. I have 4. This guy ought to be still on the board somewhere so he can command his units. I don't know. 4 units still in extent or whatever, but otherwise the points are pretty much set here. So we're at 182 for the Anglo-Allied. It's not really an issue. The issue is actually, hey, how close are the two French and Prussian armies to breaking? The French are at 53, the Prussians are at 79. So we're looking at about a 30-point difference. Now the Prussians have been taking heavy losses on their attacks from an uncomfortable position. So it's not a guarantee that they're going to win. But I mean, look, the Prussian army is not going to make it on the board. I mean, there's just no way to make it to 50 turns. The game, I've decreased my points as much as I really can. Well, for the French, that's 5 turns. For the Prussians, at their 15 points a turn, that's a little over 5 turns. 5 hours. Oh, not turns, hours. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So, if no casualties were to occur, we could actually make it out to the end. I'm always looking at it on a per turn basis, and I'm not paying on that. I'm just thinking about that. We still have this Dutch guy going back, trying to get his units. That's going to be a constant drain on the Anglo-Allied. The next hour, these will all be withdrawn, and it actually shouldn't be 4. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Apparently, I miscounted as to what's where. That's fine. I don't want to get into the French movement because I'm snoozy, but yeah, this is our current situation. Our Saturday night going on about midnight after my 6 hours or so of raid, plus a few minutes of that other game and watching some videos. But at the same time, I kind of napped for about an hour in there. We'll get back to this. And yeah, raid eats up 6 hours a day, basically, on just normal days. There's nothing big to do today. So we're on the French movement. I was moving along and realized, hey, I had engaged these guys a little bit, so I'm going to do a little bit of fire combat in there. Probably doesn't do much. I don't know who would have gotten the advantage, so I'm going to roll the initiative as I would. Okay, so the Allies get their first shot. They don't get a hit. And the two French don't get a hit either. Both looking for 6s here with this. But yeah, just an easy way to catch up to something where I should have been aware that there was possible fire combat there. And the French have positioned themselves in such a way that there's no shock combat really from the Anglo-Allied. I don't know. Did I move in here? I may have. I don't know what happened. the idea is I'm going to get a rally with this calf. I think it was just sitting there. I don't think I did anything with it. Bunch of infantry moving up to threaten this calf, another calf here to protect, this calf here. I guess is protecting whatever. But for the most part, I broke up, got a couple of kind of good quality units here, but with a small amount of strength points, 3, 5, 3, maybe 3, 6, 3 on the other side, I'm not sure. Probably just a 5. Yeah, just a 5. But I had assumed they had a 5 strength, and I had like a 4-point marker under one of them. But that one broke up into a couple of skirmishers to provide a little support to the flank there of my position. There is some danger, though. There's some cav wandering around disordered through the woods that could provide something of a problem, as I don't have any cav back here to protect me. I do have artillery. That's something of a defense, and I have some terrain advantages. It's going to take them a while to get into a position. Name might want to dispatch a squadron over or a brigade over in that direction, whatever it is. And I'm ringing this with more potential fire. Although, yeah, they're going to get a shot in before this guy moves. This guy's going to get them in command and be able to pull the infantry out. I could pull the skirmishers out anyway, for what that's worth. But yeah, and that gets me to the end of another turn. And we're 1 turn away from the Prussian First Corps coming in. How about that? Time really flies when you're doing very little. Getting really bad here. I didn't put my dice up for the turn. I didn't move this thing. I know where I am. I'm at the start of a new turn. Just because it hasn't been all that long. But I have got to get into better habits like I was earlier. Switching to this side has definitely caused some issues. So that means I'm on French command and rally, huh? I fear I'm running into a problem. Now, I don't remember this problem when I was stacking the pieces. I have up here the 14th of the 4th cav. Here I have the 13th of the 4th cav. I don't see a 13th of the 4th cav existing anywhere. I'm looking for cav units over here. This is like 1st cav. This is the 3rd Corps. These guys are accounted for elsewhere. Way down in the corner down there is Imperial Guard cav. The guys up here are 1st Corps attached cav. If I look at the French army, I might be able to find an answer to this. Or not, I don't know. They all started on the board. Second Corps. I'm looking for 4th Corps stuff. It's all Imperial Guard down here. 1st cav. 3rd. Here's the 4th cav. Supposedly I should have some. The 14th is here, the 13th is here. I have leaders for the 13th and leaders for the 14th. Well, what I was thinking was, I screwed something up and put the wrong guys somewhere. The only place where there might be cav that I'm not aware of is they might have made it in the bag somehow as casualties. but that seems weird too. Like, I feel like I have a mismatch. I have commanders from the 13th, and I have the 14th over here, and these, I think, are all guards. This is stuff from the 11th and 12th that got pulled out. I don't see these leaders here. I wouldn't have put any leaders in the bag, though. That's the thing. No matter what. And that's where I'm getting lost, because I had everything spread out on here. So they've got to exist somewhere on the board. I just don't know where. So I guess I keep looking. This makes sense. I must have not looked very carefully at some point or another. I've got the leaders from the 14th over here in charge of the 13th. The 13th is assigned over here. I'll figure out some way of assigning that. But I think I'm going to bring these cav in instead of these. These are a lower quality cav than the units from the Cav Corps. And I think they're about as close, to be honest. When I take into account distance from the enemy and everything, these can move rather quickly. So yeah, I think I'm going to buy those 2 units and bring them into play to counter any kind of attack over here. But not very surprisingly, their values are the same, so I just swapped out the leaders with whatever casualty level they had on them. So I'm going to bring those in. I paid their price over here, not in the long run. And now I got to look for possible charges. None were available. I'm feeling a little sick to my stomach from playing. Again, swapping the glasses, these stronger ones, I swing my head, whatever. I think my eyes are just not used to them particularly. And yeah, I should wear them all the time, but it's, I don't know, this didn't start happening until I got sick. Like, I was able to cope with it, whatever was happening. So I think it's a combination of my illness and the vision things. Anyway, I'm gonna go do something else. I did my rallies. It turns out there weren't any charges available for me to declare, so that's good. I'm after 6 a.m. I may have a little bit of a discrepancy. I found a couple of units that I think I removed the leader for and probably already paid the cost off of 5 supposedly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I think it's okay. Technically, I should pay another couple points. Yeah, I can do that by doing this. And they would have gone off that side of the map. I don't know if they went in that particular hex. They might have come off of here, but it's close enough. And moving closer to this. But as I get to the Prussians, I run into a problem. With this cav right here, he's disordered. If he turns tail to run, he gets shot. He also is open to an opportunity charge against him. But if he stands there, he gets shot too, just not as well. It's just kind of a horrible position to be in. The infantry's managed to move up on that disordered cav and put it in a horrible place. There's no capability of the cav to retreat from something like that easily. Also running into problems with the opportunity cav charges. So if this cav moves forward, this gets an opportunity charge against him. Conceivably, these get opportunity charges against this. This one doesn't. This one does. And keeping the ordering amongst them, if I have to resolve them during the shock phase afterwards, is going to be difficult to do. I almost feel like it makes more sense to do it at the same time, but there was some reason why that doesn't work. I ran into a situation earlier where the fact that the sequence of play says that they happen during the shock phase at least caused a difference in how the game would play out. I I feel more comfortable with the Ney versus Wellington system dividing, and I see why they did it now, why they made separate rules for it, dividing the opportunity charges from counter charges. Although, in a sense, this would be a counter charge under those rules. It couldn't be done. Right? Let me think. Like, I don't think you can countercharge an opportunity charge. I'm not positive about that. But I feel like I have to use something like that to be able to maintain any kind of sanity here. The problem, of course, is the situation becomes similar to this Prussian cav here, but this happened according to the normal sequence of play. I charged in, I hit them, drove them off into this location, and then the infantry moves up into place where it can hit the cav. Again, this is because the system doesn't have an automatic sort of cav recall after a charge type of situation that other systems have. Had I set this up, yeah, this situation shouldn't have been able to happen, but again, see, because if I succeed in my charge, I would get a breakthrough charge against this, which wouldn't be desirable, right? Like, I wouldn't set up like this. So I don't know what to do about this. I'm beginning to think that I just reverse this. Take these disorders off. Take these off. And put a marker to prevent that kind of exploit by the infantry that feels absolutely wrong. But now I have to indicate what's going on, that I have a charge going in here. Technically, the countercharge has already been succeeded as well, which means I'll use a green marker for that. We have this. So this is the situation, which means I don't want to move up because there could be a breakthrough. I can move there, but I don't want to move any further than that. So we'll position like this instead of engaging earlier. Now, I may keep the same results or whatever, if I can recall. It's basically a success. The French get a success, disordering, and the Prussians run away, and that's fine. I don't want to be in the position where the French are facing a line of infantry after the cav and they didn't get a chance to hit them. So in this circumstance, I found the flaw in playing outside of the proper sequence that the game rules applied, and I'm trying to fix that. But there is no fix for what happened here. The French were able to move up into place the same way the Prussians were able to. But the thing is, there's time in between here. The French were able to move up after the charge. How would they have done that? I'm not sure. I'm not even sure this should have happened. Because this unit looks like it's in a position to be charged by the cav. Now, if the infantry had moved into a position where the cav had to charge up that far, that would be different. But I don't think the French infantry can be where it is. I'm gonna back this unit up because I think I'm probably cheating. This was a unit that came from here. Jesus, I don't know. Let's just put it like this. Because I really don't think what happened here could have happened either. And so I'm going to fix that as well. When we get to the reciprocal fire, which is very shortly, I do get some shots at that cav, but not particularly bad shots. Ooh, that's the other thing. If the cav had withdrawn, it's disordered. It can't be enfilotted under those circumstances. But, whatever. That would allow that Prussian cav to get out then. But before the shock, which is just this, nothing else is shocking. This is our situation. Prussian cav trying to ooze its way around to provide a threat there. Now remember, I activated some French cav, but it's not going to get there in time. So the infantry's... I mean, the Prussians have to recover. Right? At least there's that. Bringing some infantry into play to go against this. The artillery's got a bead on them at close range, though, which is kind of impressive. And then trying to engage along here as well. The French cav has more or less stymied us here. We'll see how that all works out. And meanwhile, this column is moving slowly. I move Blucher back here so that he can reach these guys when they come in and keep them so that they can keep moving, so that he doesn't have to reactivate them or anything. They would automatically deactivate, which would save me points, which might actually be worth it because I've got such a traffic jam here. But on the other hand, I also kind of want to get them into the fray as soon as possible. One thing that's helpful is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I could conceivably start using this road instead of just the forest road. As these guys get closer, Blucher might be able to keep all of that in command, which might help me a little bit. I don't know. Taking into effect the rolls I already had for those cav attacks, because I don't want to reassess. There's no real reason to. The Prussians got pushed back, but the French are not in a great position. They've got a line facing them, but it's not right in front of them. It wasn't something they could hit. They could hit this, but they can't because it's in hard cover, so they can't actually charge it. And that will get us to the mutual fire faces. I'll swap pipes out and take care of that. This is a hairy mess that's really kind of challenging me in terms of, like, you know, what my understanding of the system is, etc. And yeah, you know, it kind of has to be played the way it's written, but it's still not pleasant what ends up happening. And the artillery fire blows a hole over here, a hole over here. The Prussian morale is not good. There's a lot of units that look like Landwehr, but I'm not sure if they really are, or if that's meant to express both the fatigue of their march as well as their loss at Ligny earlier. And assuming I've got the right one, I can't remember. Wavre Ligny, which one's which? It's just not clear in my head. Yeah, so they took a couple of casualties off of that. That's one thing in the French's advantage, is that this Prussian army is not incredibly solid. Now, the Anglo-Allied army as a whole had some garbage in it too. There's no question about that. But here it's intermixed in, like, individual units are like a couple of good units, like one really good unit, which can break down into skirmishers, 2 4 morale units, which feel like regular lines, and then 6 kind of crappy units that really don't like to be in the fighting. They're not quite as bad. Yeah, no, they're as bad as Landwehr. Yeah, they're two quality on the column and 1 quality in the line. So they're really iffy stuff. And so you can have units barely hit that run away. I found myself correcting. I have units in line. First of all, there were like 18 units stacked together, which you can do. But they're 6-point units each, which means they have to go into extended line, which means they can't be stacked. It also, they wouldn't have been able to move there. So yeah, that's another thing. The Prussian units are these units that are big until they take a hit, and then they're normal sized, like 1 hex sized units, because they have the triple rank lines, just like the French do. But there's just something so weird about that. It's like, oh yeah, your unit's really fucked up until it takes some damage. Or, and maybe this is the whole thing, for the ones that can, and I don't think these can, I think their 2-point morale means they're not allowed to. They can break off 1 skirmisher each, thus reducing themselves. Sure, they drop their morale, so their line morale goes down to crappy, but at least they can operate as functioning units, which you can't do with a 6-point unit. So it's kind of baked in that they really need to drop their skirmishers. But these guys I don't think are allowed to, because they only have the 2 morale, which means they're class 3 units, which sucks. And the crowding over such a broad front, I know it's not all that big, but it has started to cause some real problems with, like, me just being clumsy and knocking counters around and whatnot. But what did we get to? Well, the Prussians are down to 73. The French are at 50. So I don't think a hell of a lot was done there. Again, the French are trying to minimize their losses, but, well, they're trying to minimize the amount of violence that's present to try to stretch things out. But they have to do hits to the Prussians. They're just hoping that, the skirmishers and whatnot that they put out, which they're running out of, but I got a whole bunch more coming, will cause the attack to be more muted, and also will end up getting an advantage overall in terms, because they'll get more shots and whatnot, I guess. I'm not sure, because it's just so crowded for both sides. It's especially bad for the Prussians with this column coming up here, but I've got a lot of troops pumping in for the French too, and it just feels like I'm throwing too much into this frontage, more than it can handle by far. And we're going to pause there, going to the Allied command phase. I think I'll be trying to sleep. Oh, boy, so late night, like 11 p.m. Sunday night, and raid ate up about 6 hours so far. I've got very little of my stuff done for the day, but I was pushing to try to get somewhere in sort of the live arena stuff in that game. Actually, the 3v3, which is just so fucked up, and spent a lot of time fighting battles against other players. They've got it set so that, there's millions of players in the game, but in order to get to a certain late game goal, what used to be an end game goal but isn't anymore, you basically have to get in the top couple thousand players, in this variant. And of course, there are thousands and thousands of players, probably. I would say out of the people who go to the end game, probably at least half of them are paying money to play, right? So you kind of can't get over that easily. There are people who do. I would like to be one of them, but it's sort of not happening right now. I'm close. But, yeah, and I spend a lot of effort on it. I usually don't. And I decided, fuck it, let's work real hard on it this week. Maybe I can breach it. And then I don't have to stay there. I've got a clanmate who's doing that. Anyway, where are we in the game? According to this, we're on the Allied command phase and rallies. Not a lot to do. I'll see if there's any cav charges in play, and but there's not a lot else. I mean, it's called a command phase, but other than activating units right at the beginning of the game, you know, in the first 10 turns or so, the units that, you know, players are deciding to focus their attacks with, or the defense and response, there's not a lot that happens in the command phase except charges, which is why Navy versus Wellington calls it the charge phase and doesn't have any command rolls. I probably don't need this here. I need to swap glasses. I can't see shit right now. But let's get started. I'm real chatty because I woke up at like 6:30 p.m. and now, well, no, 5:30 p.m. say, and now it's like 11, real time. I'm always confused because my time doesn't match real time, so I like say 6:30, and yeah, but in real time it wasn't. But I don't see daylight anymore, except when I'm just about to go to sleep, and that kind of sucks. I don't know. When I'm awake in the daytime, I don't fucking do anything, and all I want to do is go to sleep. Even if I've got enough sleep and everything, I just end up sleeping during the day, because I don't know. It feels cold during the day. It doesn't feel cold at night because it's dark out and it should be cold, and I'm not bothered by it. But when I come out during the day and it's cold, I'm like, ugh. Even though it's much colder at night, it's like, below freezing. I know that doesn't seem like much, even to me, but after Phoenix and then living here, there aren't a lot of days that are below freezing, but we're getting quite a few right now. The cav that's up here isn't in place and prepared yet. These guys are still in the woods and shit like that. So I look to the cav here. This guy's disordered. These guys actually can't see anything. Line of sight over here is blocked by the reverse slope. So I guess I have no charges. This guy back here is kind of a problem. Maybe I want to keep him on the road. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll look up the rules. See, he's outside of the 8 hex range, which means, I'm still allowed to leave the roads at 10 hexes, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, okay. I'm not sure my leaders can even leave the roads outside of 10 hexes, in which case he couldn't be rallied, and he actually kind of couldn't exist anymore if he had retreated that far back. I don't know what would happen in those cases. I'd have to think and make up rules. That's going to put us on the French movements. Okay, so French moving some of 6th Corps up here to try to cover the flank against this cav. The cav that I allocated to help defend, pushing over here. I've swapped skirmishers out, moving the line forward to try to replace the losses I've taken in the line here, and hoping to get some withdrawal fire on these since they're going to be able to pull out now. These guys still stuck in place by this. There's more of 6th Corps moving up. Traffic jam coming through here. There's a routed unit. He's going to just cause problems, but I need to get people across the stream. The Smohain. Okay. Oh yeah, we're in Belgium. Okay. That is not an unreasonable Belgian word, I guess. I don't know where I thought I was, but it sounds kind of French. And what else of interest? Not much, really. There aren't going to be any charges, or there weren't any charges. There aren't going to be any other melee attempts. Again, I could make one here, but it would fail automatically. Just not sensible, right? I have too many. I have a regular formed unit. It's not able to charge skirmishers, is what it comes down to. The only thing that can charge skirmishers is bigger blocks of skirmishers, really. And even that's not guaranteed, but I don't mind it not being guaranteed. I do mind it being impossible for formed units to even affect skirmishers and chase them away. It just feels ridiculous to me. Like, I could see them being hesitant to go forward, where they'd have to make a morale check or something. But once they get there, they're not going to be disrupted by this little group of men, no matter how high the morale of those men, without terrain. Okay, I buy it if there's defensive terrain, but the skirmishers are just too potent against shock. That's going to put us to the end of the turn, which means we're going to be seeing that first corps coming in next turn. I got to go downstairs because Raid is playing by itself, or has been, and I want to see, maybe it did something I don't expect, something good. My guess is I failed. I'm thinking about the fact that the game kind of went, I feel like the casualty levels impacting morale and all that, with the intensity of combat I had, felt a little too extreme. But that may be necessary for the simple fact of giving the French a chance to win this battle. In order for them to defeat the Anglo-Allied, especially before the Prussians come on, whatever, which is kind of their auto-victory type situation. Didn't quite reach that. Now I got to face the Prussian onslaught. That's still kind of, I'm not entirely sold. Like before, I thought the French were just doomed because of the point totals. And yeah, they're pretty extreme. It's a 20-point difference, but I'm on defense and I seem to be causing more than I'm taking, which is kind of cool. But in terms of actually having a chance to defeat the Anglo-Allied army, I think it was necessary for the game under the rest of the rules, etc. Like, you could have had something kind of funky where, army morale and stuff has sort of a randomizer in it, in addition to what's happening on the battlefield, etc. I think it would be kind of necessary to allow the French to have a chance of winning, to allow them to break the Anglo-Allied army, as they did here. And I think those numbers are a little skewed within the system as a whole, making the armies a little bit more fragile than maybe they should be. Although again, if you look at Wellington's statement that it was a close run thing, or the closest run thing, I don't remember which he said, then you got some argument for it. But as it stands, it feels like, the historical situation was an all-out attack along the lines of what I did. This is what I think happened. And the Anglo-Allied army was close to breaking at about this point, or maybe a little later, right? Once the Prussians are already beginning to roll things up and beginning to cause issues. So, and I say a little later because the fighting didn't really happen here. It happened a little further back, but whatever. Giving the Prussians more chance to deploy, etc. But, in the interest of making it a more exciting and more competitive game, maybe it makes sense. Maybe it makes sense. It does make it, I think, for the historical scenario, a little too easy. Like, the rules kind of say, hey, if you want the French to have a chance in this, you kind of have to let them attack early. And that might be the case if the army morale numbers or whatever were closer to what they should be, I think. I think that the armies are a little too fragile. And in the historical scenario, honestly, it feels to me like the French have like a 50-50 shot of breaking the Anglo-Allied army. Maybe not before the Prussians come in, but at some point soon after, like I did. And, beyond that, if that's putting like the mean result to be like something that didn't happen historically, I don't know. But then again, I may have played the Brits very poorly by coming in too much strength off the hill, not defending enough, not throwing enough skirmishers out to defend my lines, throwing far too many into the Hougoumont because for whatever reason, I believed that that was just the key to the whole battlefield, you know, because that's how it's portrayed in most of the history that I've read. But it really isn't, right? If you could break the army without taking it, which I did, that's fantastic. Another 2 or 3 hours before there's anything I can do in raid. So I'm back up here. You know, it's just turned to be Monday, and it's like, this is just such a stupid life I'm living, but I need the something to do that eats up my time. I really hate how it directs and demands certain times. Part of why I picked up the other game is to fill in these slots. Why don't I play this? Well, I can't play my board games straight through anymore. Anyway, we're at the beginning of a new turn. We got the Pruskies coming on with another force, but first we get to see if the French have any charges. They don't. The only cav they had anywhere near the front is this guy, and he was routed, but now he's disordered. It doesn't really fix his situation, but he's not the threat that I thought. I thought he was going to route through people, but I had a leader on top of him, so he was fine for that. Okay, let's move me some allies. So slightly too large Prussian units having to move forward in column and get mauled because they have no other choice, basically. There is not enough room to deploy. This gets me more fire, I guess. I don't know. Throwing my cav around the edge here. Don't know what this guy's up to. I'll cover that cav. But, you know, I feel like I need to put pressure on the French as much as I can. Haven't worked my way through completely. I'm just so pissed off about those big units that can't form skirmishers, and if they take a hit, they're in much better condition, even though they have like no morale. They basically shouldn't be on the battlefield as far as I'm concerned. They suck too bad. But I need to use my troops. Over the rules, because I wanted to bring Prussians in on the north of map B, the ones I have set up there for First Corps. I thought, well, wait a minute, they're going to be out of command and deactivate immediately. So I decided to look at those deactivation rules, and I apparently missed something. It's not a big deal. During the first Allied command phase following the demoralization of the Anglo-Allied Army, all Prussian brigade command units which are beyond the command radius of the 2 command units of the Army of the Rhine must be removed from the map. I kept all of 4th Corps and 2nd Corps in command, and they were all on the map before this happened. All the brigades attached to these commands, as well as all Prussian brigades which are not deployed on the map, are automatically deactivated. I think that means that there are 3 brigades that were not activated. Once it's deactivated, it has to be forced to check morale or occupy a hex within command radius of one of those. If they're deactivated before entering the map, they can never be committed before the end of the game. So I think the Prussians are 3 of these short, and that'll give them 3 more points because there was 1 interphase. And all these Prussian units just aren't coming on. It's really a pity. I would have liked to see the outflank coming there. So this is the only Prussian army I have to deal with. They don't lose morale for not bringing troops on, even though they have less morale to lose, which feels a little weird, right? Like, I think this actually improves the morale of these forces. They've inched forward through the woods again. This is the best they can do. I think it looks pretty bad for the Prussians, to tell you the truth. The only thing they have going for them is that they have like 25 points on the French morale. But they're in a really harsh position in terms of fighting their way out of this bag. All right. Well, that makes it easier. I'm pretty sure there's no No melee's happening. I don't know. I could actually make one here. This is a really shitty unit that's moved up adjacent to some decent French stuff. That's actually appealing. Yeah, what looked like it might be a good idea turns out not to be. Those are disordered from moving through some villages and whatnot, and also very low strength, like 2 strength points. So they would not be a good candidate for a charge, which means we go to time to play with the firepower. Artillery fire was relatively effective for both sides. The French disordered a couple of those crappy lines up here. Well, columns. They fired on the column table, I hope. But now they're small enough and have taken some fire so that like they're willing to follow orders and actually form a line. Which is, you know, obviously what I'd like them to have been able to do. It's just a matter of the scale. Like, you gotta figure it's intentional, right? That the scale was picked in such a way that the frontages just fail. But I can't understand what the point of it is. The unit takes some fire so it's easier to form into a line and maneuver and whatnot. It just feels fucking wrong. Sure, a much smaller unit or whatever, but it just feels to me like, you know, there's so many 6-point units, they should just be able to form line. At least the a fair amount of the Anglo-Allied forces can form line at 6 units, at 6 strength points. I think, well, maybe not. No, they still form a triple line, which would go over. Yeah, and these guys can't even dispatch skirmishers, so they can't operate. They're basically fucking useless until they start taking casualties. And then they're not great, but at least you can like maneuver them in line and use them to attempt to do something. On the same side, though, the Prussian artillery blew away the skirmisher and routed a couple of units back. So there's a hole in the French line, and then this cav took a couple of hits and a leader and ended up disordered, which means it's pretty fucking useless, although it's going to have a rally very shortly. It is not in minimum range fire zone, so it is able to rally. And now we go to the infantry fire. Both sides are kind of falling apart here. We got a collapse going along this line. That Landwehr and whatnot just couldn't hold up to any kind of fire. But at the same time, some of the skirmishers ran away here. This break's gotten widened a little bit, I think. I'm not sure. It's just beginning to look pretty ugly. And the point totals, so Prussians are at 65. I don't think that they're really at a point where I have to worry about their routed units. It looks like they have a lot, but a fair amount of those are skirmishers. So I'm guessing it's under 20 points of routed units there. So I don't have to worry too much about them. But the French are only at 39. However, they don't have a whole shit ton of routed units. This is maybe 10 here or less. Got some in here. But we are beginning to get close to the point where the armies might have to start counting their routes to see if they've gone over their limit and actually break. We're not there yet, but it's getting pretty close. And that'll put me onto the Allied command phase and then the French movement. I gotta go down, I'm out of tea, and I gotta play my secondary game on the computer. Yeah, I mean, I gotta do something while I'm waiting for my tea to boil, but beyond that, yeah, it's sort of a... But I may come up here more often right now. I spent a little bit of time fantasizing about the battle, doing my drumming, whatever, if you want to go look at that video to understand what the hell that's about. But as I did so, I realized, wait a minute, once again, I forgot that fire. Came to no effect. Next time the Dutch move, their skirmisher's going to have to run away. But I figure it might as well stand there holding the gates as it were, because, you know, if I can cause a French casualty, that might help me win the game for the Prussians. But anyway, in that fantasizing, I was thinking about the fact that what we've got here is basically two armies facing each other, neither of which is in really tip-top fighting shape. The French just won a battle, and now they're throwing, you know, worn-out, exhausted forces into play. But the Prussians just lost a battle, like, what, a day before? Is it 1 day or 2 days? 2 days before? And have been marching hard since then in order to get here. So it kind of makes sense that these two armies are not in any real shape to stand up and slug it out. My secondary game's undergoing maintenance, and so I might as well come back to this. By the way, I should be doing dishes, honestly, and reading or something. But it's hard for me to do anything in the dark. It just really is. Like, I mean, I have enough light and everything. It's just the dark, and I don't know. I opened up a new pipe. I had a package that came a couple days ago. Got around to opening it. I have a new pipe in it. A little too small for my taste. I'm never sure what size I'm going to get to kind of tell you, but I don't know. And I was afraid it was going to be small. Oh, well. At the price point that I'm willing to buy new pipes, they're almost always too small. All right, so let's start with, I guess, the Allied command. I don't think that there's any cav charges available. These guys can't see. These guys are probably disordered. These guys, I think, are still disordered. Yeah. So we're going to be kind of cycling our cav this turn rather than using it, which feels like it's happening every turn. The skirmishers and this lost gun crew that has to make its way back up are rallying. The infantry are not, and they're running here. This is actually named, I could show you by moving things, the Bois de Paris. I'm assuming bois is woods or forest. But I like it as the idea of the Paris boys being there. But they're not. They're the Prussians. So anyway, I don't have cities or anything on any of those. That's going to put me to the French movement and whatnot. Ugh, doesn't look good. Trying to solidify the line over here. Throw some skirmishers in front here. Throw a line up against that cav for what it's worth. You do have a unit sitting here in the hard point threatening it. That can't be good. And I hope that's a skirmisher running here. Yep. And their cav making its way around to try to deal with that new threat over on that flank. That should be the end. Allied shock. You know, I'm not even going to look. There basically isn't any. I'm sure of that. So we push ourselves to what? 5:45 turn? Running at a pretty good pace, I think. As units rally, you know, that danger starts to dissipate a little bit. Yeah, I got a couple of these, but they were there before. It's basically only right after the fire phase that you kind of have to worry and put some thought. Surrounding this thing, it's going to be hard for him to get out of there. In fact, I think he's doomed at this point, just like the Huguenot was. But he may get lucky, get a hit. Otherwise, he's a victory point. There's a lot of skirmishers making their way onto the field from all these other units. You know, some people have suggested, hey, you should throw the guard in. Yeah, you know, it would definitely have been worth it because they're high quality units. The Prussians are, I think, not one of the forces that are exempted from panicking when the guard faces them. So they would be really, really effective and probably limit my losses by doing that. However, they had a long way to walk. And because of, the way the activations work and whatnot, and a bunch of units that were closer, that were, because of the outflank that, and the success that was happening there, that were able to throw themselves into the fray a little bit easier. If I hadn't wanted to defend up next to that forest, yes, the guard would have been definitely the thing to use. They're fresh. I have enough skirmishers that I could cover them from other units, and the guard are allowed to they're not allowed to create skirmishers, I think, but they're allowed. It may be limited. Like young guard may be allowed to break into skirmishers or something, but they're allowed to commandeer skirmishers from other units and use them as a cloud form. But that would not have allowed me to defend where I am. And that's actually doing a lot of work for me. The fact that the Prussians are stumbling out of the woods, not able to get off this stupid map where they have all kind of restrictions. They don't have those restrictions once they get into other areas of the board. Well, there's a lot of that map. But yeah, I mean, I would have basically maybe been able to defend a line up here instead, which isn't a bad line either. There's forest and such not, some terrain that would help me. So I don't know, but I made my choice, and now I can't afford to throw them in. I really just can't. I'm too short on points. If I have to fall back on them, yeah. But if I have to fall back on them, my army's probably routed. It's about 9:15 p.m. Yeah, it's funny. I basically didn't see any daylight today on Monday. This is like Cyber Monday. I already put an order in for stuff. A couple of things I needed. I'm not really thrilled with the idea of going through Amazon and all that for a number of reasons, but it's just easier, So I ordered a new space heater. I ordered an internet switch so that I can bring this downstairs and use it without having way more cable than I need running downstairs, and some lighter flints. I think that's it. I couldn't bring myself to do anything like, oh, I'm fat, I should get some new clothing, because everything's either wearing out or doesn't fit me anymore. That's just outside my experience. I can get sloppy, stay around at home stuff but anything that I'd wear out, I feel like I kind of have to get at a Goodwill or something like that if I don't find it. Anyway, here we are at the beginning of a new turn. This is not an hourly turn, and we're starting with the French command phase. I'm up here kind of early, I guess, because I'm in one of those situations again where it's several hours before Raid really wants me to play again. And I've actually used up too many resources, but it's not a big deal. Why I didn't see any daylight. The beginning of the day, when I was still awake, I was awake until 11 a.m. basically. There was just so much fog. It was, almost impossible to see outside. I think the fog maintained throughout the day, for what I understand, but it would have lifted a little bit. But anyway, it's like I'm in this weird twilight existence of darkness and whatnot. Let's get on with the French command. I'm not expecting to send anything new in. Are there any cav charges? The cav seems to have taken cover largely behind this infantry here. That one's disordered. These guys aren't in place yet, so the answer to that is probably not. And so this will mainly be a rally phase. Finish that up with very little happening. But you know what? Just concentrating, it makes my gut feel funny. I don't like how I feel. So I'm gonna go down and watch some more video, and I'll try to come up and do the movement, but right now I just don't feel up to it. I can't pussy out that easily. Anyway, I moved one piece. I moved these Prussian cav. Fuck. This is why people use plexia. I actually shifted the map as well, but I moved these Prussian cav with the intention of getting away from this, among other things. It took some fire, was disordered by it. I really should move further. Let's move here. That'll get me out of the problem. But now I got cav coming that way. That fire disordered me, so that's kind of problematic. I'm gonna have to bring another cav unit around. This whole cav gambit to get around here is kind of failing. The French cav is coming and I'm gonna have to deal with that. I'm not good enough to deal with it. These are crappy Prussian cav. There are some good ones, but these are not them. I don't know if these are. No, this is more garbage. You know, I was hoping to throw some pressure. It did do one thing though. It caused an activation, which is going to cost the French, you know, a couple points each hour. So, at least there's that. But it's probably going to go poorly for me. I may just withdraw my cav in the light of, you know, in the face of stronger opposition. The Prussians have a hard task here, man. I kind of alluded to this, but since so much of the action is happening over here, right along the map crease, basically, I shifted the map a little bit more that way. I no longer need to be over there. I can move my T and lighter over here if need be. And that takes it, you know, it's on a kind of a bump between the two tables, but it's getting, that brown table is kind of funky. It's got hills of its own on it. But yeah, and I also moved a piece of tape from over there to over here. I could take another one. I just don't think I'm going to need all the things securing that side of the table where a lot of the fighting was happening, but now it's happening over here. So I'm just shifting things over. I can take this piece of tape. It doesn't seem to be doing anything where it is anyway. So I'd have to push it down. Yeah, they look so ugly when they're on there. They get dirty. Okay. Now I will try to move more than one Prussian piece. Work my way. This traffic jam is just getting miserable. So I have to pull Prussian units off the road to follow their leader. Because he's off trying to rally a unit to keep it from routing off the board. It's a different unit, but I don't have many choices. And these guys aren't disordered. Well, I mean, they are disordered, but they're in the woods, so it doesn't count. I pulled the cav out of here to make some room for some more units. That's actually some of the Prussian decent cav, but they're down to 1 point each. There's like 2 1-point cavs in there, which means they have like no morale left. They just need to retire from the battlefield, basically. There's not much they can do. I keep catching myself trying to put units into line that cannot go into line. I actually could have done this one. This one can go into line here. Like this. He was able to change formation. I think he'd actually have to be positioned this way because of where he was. But it's just, fuck me. It's just getting so miserable in here. The game is really, really annoying to play when you start getting into a lot of depth of troops and whatnot. And the Prussians are especially bad because I cannot read their numbers. Even with my good glasses, I really have to work hard to catch their designations because they're dark on dark. This is how the mass moves, or mass. Units within the 8 hexes of the French have to move through the woods costs. So, they're just doing horrible shit in there. And I've just got so much congestion here. It's not an effective attack at all. But the command roles that require me to be on the road, if not kind of in contact with the enemy, and the way the road network is built, where I can only come in through these 2 hex sides, and really this is the only road I could use. I could have come up this way. That might have been wise. And then operate on these roads, but I didn't choose to do that. I didn't realize how ugly this was going to get. I just have units in horrible places all over the place. So much force coming in, and none of it able to achieve purchase on the French. French have a lot of opportunities for melee, things like this, but none of them are any good. So we shall pass on that. We eliminated this guy as he tried to get out of there to try to catch up with his buddy. If I'd completely surrounded him, I wouldn't have gotten those free shots, and he would have possibly gotten a shot back or something. And yeah, I'm at a point where if I had read the rules to the next game I'm playing completely already, I would be considering tossing it in, just because this is just such a nightmare to handle. It feels like the denouement of the battle, but yeah. That's going to put us on the fire phase, and now I'm going to actually take a break. A fair amount of artillery fire. The French brought a couple more guns up. The Prussians managed to man a gun that had been decrewed. There was a fair amount of it that was counter battery fire, none of which hit. Even though we're looking at 50-50 at worst, Prussian guns firing. The French had a 2/3 chance. They only, I think, fired 1 counter battery. But the fire against infantry units, especially those shitty Prussian units that have to move forward in column, was very effective. And we've knocked them down, I don't know, about 6 hits, I think. And that'll bring us to the infantry fire. The initiative, I think they start at this side, because if they start over here, they fire this unit and they're immediately getting trumped. This side, I'm not so sure. Looks to me like there's more Prussian units, so again, it's going to be one of those work our way in both directions. I gotta load up a pipe before I start actually rolling though. And for the infantry fire, a lot of smoke, but not a lot of hits. A couple, but so now we're at 38 for the French and 57 for the Prussians. I think that artillery fire gave the French a little bit of an advantage. There just weren't a lot of hits in total. I'm going to break again before I do the Allied command and then the French movement stuff. I do not think that there are any cav charges set up. Like this guy got disordered running. These guys are in the woods. Here I'm screening them mainly with the infantry and whatnot. It's too crowded and the infantry is more effective. So yeah, I got about 40 minutes before raid takes me over for quite some time. Did the Allied command phase. There really wasn't anything to do there, no charges, and the rally phase. So, the cav is recycled now. Great. It's still not going to be effective. Very little movement by the French. Moving some skirmishers up to the front here. Notably, this huge stack here, this is something that can actually melee. For whatever reason, formed units can't melee attack. A big pile of skirmishers is incredibly effective on melee. Feels like garbage to me. But we're going to play out the system as I understand it there. And those are going to be very, very potent. when we get to the French shock phase. But it's the Allied shock phase, and they don't have any opportunities. Some guns coming up here, more skirmishers coming forward. This is going to go away very shortly, so I'm going to get rid of it now just for the sake of it. This 1906 Brigade is positioning itself here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, out of range of the Prussian units. I'm going to demobilize it at this point. I've got more than enough up at the front. I've sent too much forward. Granted, the Prussians have sent more too much, but I'm at the point where it's best to just deactivate units. I didn't do anything with these guys here. I should probably bumble them around. Yeah, I mean, this is too congested, but one thing it does is it's clearing up some room for these artillery to get themselves in place across the stream where they can bombard the Prussians, and the Prussians can't do a damn thing about it, basically. I mean, they could get close and fire on it. But that looks like it's end of turn. We're going to be on the hourly turn. I feel like I should do more. I just haven't done much at all. All right, so that we will. French command phase, my cav is up here. This one, almost, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He actually could put this cav into a charge zone. Is it worth it? Probably. Probably. Just for the morale check. They're going to run out of it, but that morale check's probably going to bust them up so that they can't do any harm to this infantry here. And I don't even have to hit them. I'm just trying to get them a morale hit there. Otherwise, yeah, we can't. Oh, we can demobilize, but we have to pay our price first. We have the 1 unit to demobilize. This gets us down to 26 points on the track. Of course, the Prussians are going to also be paying their own 12 or whatever. It's kind of weird because I think they're paying for the units that aren't on the map, but that they, oh no, those got demobilized. I took their price off. Yeah, because everything that's on the map is mobilized. So they're going to be paying another 12. That'll put them down to 45. If the French had any routed units, I'd be worried, but I think they don't. They might have like 1 somewhere. I don't see any though. But their army is very close to breaking. Like I said, the Guard was not going to get a chance to come in. They just weren't. Much as I'd like to play with their special rules and everything and look them up. And then I guess rally, and then we move some Prussians we really don't want to do. The French aren't that hard because they have a nice solid line. The Prussians have a fucking mess as they keep breaking on the French line. Russian cav manages to not get disordered. They only could succeed on a 1 and skirt around and get itself over here. Not even in firing range. This guy, though, tried to withdraw, tried to come around here to provide some additional support. He ended up getting shot by those skirmishers in the woods and getting scared and running away. We're pushing forward, another unit up against these skirmishers, so he can only smack one of them with his shock combat. And this is it. We're going to see a real shock combat of infantry versus infantry that's actually effective. The weird thing is, it's a bunch of skirmishers jumping in against some other unit. That other unit, well, so this is worse morale, which gives us a big bonus, but it has a better fire combat. It would be firing at a 5 as a rank 3 unit against skirmishers. It would hit on a 5 or 6, whereas that column will only hit on a 1 if I hit that. I do have 7 skirmishers in there. check the strength points of the other Prussian unit. I know the one's a 5. Is this one a 5 as well? This one's a 4. So actually, yeah. Oh no, it's a 2 morale. Yeah, so that's a 0 morale as well. I'm going to get a plink off at this. I have artillery firing at that. I'm going to hit this one. Both get to shoot, actually, as does this skirmisher here. So we could actually take a fair amount of losses. Let's see what happens with that. I'm not going to do it on camera because it's hard to hold the camera and I got to paw through stuff. As I think about it, I'm being stupid. I don't want to attack. The French are trying to reduce the overall intensity of this conflict because they're winning as long as they're firing at the Prussians. The fire combat is to their advantage. How does it work with the skirmishers? Yes, I would be an advantage in the skirmishers. Let's say they went in. There are actually 7 points here. Let's say I went against that 4. Presuming I didn't get hit by the shots, and 2 of the shots would be on a 6, 1 on a 5 and 6. I would probably have at least 6, which means I'd still be at the 150%. I have a 5 morale, kind of no matter what. Unless the whole stack breaks because of a shot. So that would give me a +5 on the attack. I'm not at lower ground. So I would be rolling over here. I would almost well, I have a 50% chance of routing the enemy. I might take a hit, and this would not rout me because it doesn't have a DR. And if I don't rout the enemy, I'm going to disorder him. The rout will do 2 hits of damage to him. So that's a pretty big effect. As well as throwing a unit back, possibly scaring the other unit off. It's actually pretty good. If I wasn't so low in my own morale, I would do it. Because I think I come out at an advantage with it. And then after I shock, I would have fire combat that I could pour. You know, it might be worth it. No, because the artillery gets to shoot first, and it's just going to be shooting at the skirmisher probably. Yeah, I don't think it's worth it right now, but this is one of those circumstances where I have the clear advantage if I shock attack. It's just a ridiculous circumstance, right? It's an unformed group of skirmishers. It's just a lot of them. Like, more than would normally be, like more than a formed unit would have in that hex, right? They're able to get as much firepower. They're able to get, I think, up to 9. They can get up to 9 firepower. You can't get that from a hex in line, okay? So somehow this mass of skirmishers not only generates more firepower than lines would. Now, what does that mean? Yeah, I don't know. So you wouldn't have 9 strength points of firepower from a line. Let's say you were here, you could get up to 5. More than that's impossible. I don't know why they have these values. More than that's impossible. Yeah, it's really weird. Because you can't have a line in one hex. If I had a single really big unit, yeah. Okay, so these do actually have some effect. Let's say I had an 8 or 9 point strength point unit. It would deploy in a line as a 2 hex line, and it would have to fire at something both hexes could see in order to get the full strength. And I'm kind of modifying that and saying you fire with half strength if you can't see with both, but you can see with one. Which is just, you know, I feel like that line would still be able to fire something, you know, half line fire or whatever. But yeah, so there is a possibility of getting up into these levels of the chart, but not from a single hex. But I can get this much firepower the same as what the skirmishers do. So somehow the skirmishers, spread out the way they are, getting all the advantage of skirmish fire, are able to fire as effectively as a French line would of that size, of a smaller size. But anyway, but only because the linear formation doesn't allow as many units to fire, right? So I think what they're saying is the density is about equivalent to a solid line going across. That makes sense. You wouldn't want it any higher than that, so that's okay. Except for the fact that these are, not firing as volley fire or anything like that. This is just not how skirmishers are supposed to work. But then the crazy thing is, they're able to operate much, much better than any formed unit can in attack. So if a formed unit wanted to make to make a shock attack, it would collapse into a hex and be a disordered unit hitting you, which of course comes with a -2. Skirmishers don't come with that, which they should. Maybe they would. Maybe they do because they're considered disordered, in which case, yeah, this is a lot more iffy then. I'd be looking at like a +3 on the 150 instead of a +5, which is nowhere near as impressive. It would still probably beat the enemy, but so that's not spelled out in the rules in any way that I know, but skirmishers are considered disordered, and disordered gives you a -2 to your shock combat value. So, yeah, I guess. I guess it would apply there. And that makes me a lot happier because then skirmishers are not like kick-ass melee combat troops, which they absolutely shouldn't be. I'm kind of okay, They can generate the same firepower as a line. Okay, probably not, but fair. I'll take it as an abstraction and say, all right, but at least there's a limit on it. And their melee capabilities aren't terribly ridiculously good in comparison to a line. They're still better because I can take hits without my morale dropping, but it's like a disordered pile. Of course, I could get 9 strength points in there, which would give me, I would be on the 200% instead of the 150. It's not that big a difference. Let's take a look at the 2, right? I get an extra route on there. That's it. Okay. So no shock. No surprise about that. And that'll get me to the reciprocal fire. I was in the midst of my fire combat realizing, wait a minute, there is a shock. This had to charge forward. I moved him 3 hexes forward, and now he's disordered. He could have gone further forward, but he couldn't hit this unit that's outside his charge zone. So he would only be able to do that with follow-through attacks. Okay. But I started the artillery fire. Another oopsie, the Prussians had a crew with this gun, but it had no ammo. They switched the crew to this gun, which didn't have a crew, but had lots of ammo. Anyway, we killed off a couple of skirmishers with our fire. The French got rid of this pesky skirmisher. They did a hit here. And now we go to the infantry fire. Which won the initiative here? Now, if I fire over here, I can fire this unit back at this. Then the Prussians could fire this. Then I could fire this. Then the Prussians could fire this. They kind of end up ahead of me there. I'm not sure how it's going to work out if I go in that direction. It looks like it's a close race where one side or the other might be taking the edge at any given time. If I start firing over here, I definitely have the edge, so I'll get further over. I think I want to do that simply because I'm guaranteed to win this race, which means the Prussians will go on the other side. As it stands with the other way, it looks like at least at some of the times I'm going to be losing the race. Okay, we got potential problems on both sides, really. You can see quite a bit cleared out through here, routes in the center by the Prussians, but there were a lot of routes because of the density of the troops here from the Prussian advance here. That, I think, is enough to break the French army, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Prussian army, after paying its 12 points in the upcoming command phase also routes. So they're damn close at the very least. But they can recover some of it because a lot of it's just, these are like 5-point units in each of these stacks. Now, there's artillery under here, so we're looking at like 20 points max there. This guy's routed 2, though. That's another 10 at least. I think the Prussians are going to rout as well. I think we're going to see the end of the battle with both sides routing. And then what it comes down to is who can get off the map quickest, because you're scoring points against you for each hour that you're still on the battle routing, which is going to be a really, really weird thing. I might do, a quick sort of guesstimate as to what's happening. But obviously the Prussians are going to have an easier time getting off the map here than the French, who have to get off on the south side of the map and have a bunch of troops here. They have some way out here, etc. It may take them a couple of hours to get those units off. If the score is within like 20 points of each other, maybe even 40 points, it might end up a close run thing. But it's not going to be, because the Anglo-Allied are already at 180 negative. So it may just call it off if both armies rout and not worry about things. If there's going to be a pursuit or something like that, well, it's not going to be much of one because the Prussian army is not in good shape. Let me do a quick check to see if the French do indeed rout. They only have 18 points. I am guessing they have more than 18 routed units. That's wrong. It's 8. 8 points of routed units. So they have 10 morale left, essentially. Oh, and the Prussians may rout still. Because again, like I said, they're taking 12 here in this upcoming command phase, and I don't know. I think they may survive as well. It's not going to be pretty in either case. Anyway, I need to break. I've done too much already. But yeah, we're definitely close to the end. These two armies can't fight. The Prussians they're too weak an army, coming in too tight a position to have really done anything effectively. And the French army is too beaten up to keep fighting. So I'm up here playing, while Raid is playing itself. It can't always do that very well, but I'm actually in a position where I'm willing to expend a certain kind of resource that's fine. All the Anglo-Allied have deactivated after paying their cost, except for these Dutch who are coming off. I didn't check my cav yet. I can actually create a cav charge here and try to disrupt this unit up here, which I probably will do. I don't think there's any cav charges anywhere else. I've got the cav behind the infantry because the infantry is more effective in general, but it's kind of hard to tell. But here's the thing: if I don't attack with the infantry, I would never have caused the casualties that I'm causing to the French. Okay, so what about for the Prussians? I think I just counted I did just count their routed. After paying their penalty of 12 points, they've got 24 points of routed units. That means that they're at 11 morale left. The French are at 18. So the battle continues, but neither army is really capable of fighting this out. They're both on the knife's edge right now. I'll launch that, I'll set up that charge if I can. Those are shitty cav, they probably won't be able to. And then I'll do my rallies. And then I'll bring the Prussians well up. Well, maybe not all that much. A lot of these routers are loose. But I have to run and try to get them. Yeah, that charge failed. I rallied some of my points. Let me see how many. I don't know how much it matters. 7 there. They're disordered, but they're in the woods. Okay, so I managed to rally the majority, 13 of them. That gets me to like 11 points running away over here. So now I'm at 24 to 18, right? But the French do not get to charge right now. If they did, they'd be able to do one there. They get to do their movement and that kind of stuff. It's kind of a situation where if I can fall back, I want to. Like if I can do it safely. Because, well, maybe not. I was thinking about this from the Prussian point of view. If the Prussians could fall back, they might want to. Because there's almost as many French committed as there are Prussians. And if I can just kind of keep them in a threatened situation, they won't be able to deactivate their forces as easily. I failed to deactivate a French unit. I was planning on deactivating that. Would I have been able to? Yes. After they paid their points, they would have been able to. Another one, another unit over here that got to deactivate as well. So now I'm down to only 9 brigades active for the French, 13 for the Prussians. I don't know what this represents. It's kind of like the army as a whole is too tired. Let's leave the units in the front that are really, really fatigued up there and pull back the reserves to rest. You got equally stupid stuff coming out of Summer Storm as far as I'm concerned with the way it handled the reserve rolls. But it's just, you know, when you try to take care of too much, when you try to encompass too many details, but refuse to build special types of rules for them. So like, I don't know. I really don't know how to put this. In both cases, it feels like choices were made in the rules design that go against any kind of common sense about how that would actually affect things, right? So like the concept of there being reserves, but in Summer Storm, well, those reserves are supposed to be near the front line and somewhat engaged in everything. But somehow those units, which would be, you know, like a brigade back here or something, which are fully active and everything, somehow those units help you in terms of raising your overall army morale, which isn't fatigue per se. Fatigue is handled at the unit level in that game, actually, I would say. So there's some argument that could be made for that, but the reality is you end up taking something like back here and declaring that it's in reserve, and you just don't use the reserve rules for it. The only thing you're doing is this special kind of gain of army morale by declaring that. What you can't do is rest. Rest will not help army morale. And it's just kind of this twisted thing, and I guess you could kind of try to make some argument for it. People are able to argue, well, at least I'm able to argue for all kinds of weird things that I don't believe in. But here, yeah, I'm faced with this. Yeah, let's not put the fresh units in from the direct rear and then pull the fatigued and beaten up units out. That would take too much effort. It's better to leave the beat up units in the line and pull the fresh units that were, you know, presumably improving the morale by being essentially a reserve, you would think. At least the front line morale, by putting them in a position where, like, yeah, well, screw it, we're just going to go rest, right? I think that Summer Storms is more able to be argued for. But again, that is a game in which every little detail was attempted to be modeled in some way or another, and this is not that. And I find this one playable where I did not find Summer Storm playable. There were other factors. The fact that, like, it didn't have fire combat, really. You know, the fire combat was simulated in a way that's similar to, you know, the Napoleon's last battles and stuff like that. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't want to deal with this. And was very cumbersome. Here, it's mechanically cumbersome. I have to go through each unit and fire it off and everything. But mentally, it's a lot easier to cope with. All right, so I guess I try to figure out what I can do with my French. This is tough, man. I know I'm behind. If I can press the Prussians a little harder and do a little more damage to them, they will break. But the point, I have nothing to work with anymore. I'm at the edge of breaking myself. I allowed myself to fudge and fix a couple of units I intended to demobilize. I probably should have demobilized this cav, just so next hour I pay a point less. Although honestly, this game is probably not going to make it through the hour. But anyway, these cav are moving forward, trying to figure out what else to do. Well done, doing very little movement. This artillery is out of ammo, so it's headed back. Through my skirmishers forward, push the additional reserve skirmishers that were floating around out here from, you know, the earlier battle. They're all coming up to join. Over here, taking some plink shots that'll happen at that cav. I feel like I've diverted whatever threat there was here, but I'm pushing the infantry down to face the Prussian infantry, opening things up a little bit more. Yeah, that's going to be more casualties for both of us, honestly. The one thing that I have as an advantage, because I've drawn from all the army, I've got a lot of skirmishers coming up. The Prussians' army is smaller. They have a couple of quality units. Basically, each brigade has one quality unit that can fully break down. So they can actually throw a fair amount more skirmishers forward too, but it's getting rid of their only decent units in the game, basically. But there you have it. I think that makes the end of the game turn. I can't imagine that the Allies have a shock available to them. So, let's go to 6:15. And that'll be a break. I'll go down and see how Raid is doing. Maybe make it back up again. Probably, I don't know. Right around midnight on Tuesday night, and although this is a normal time for me to come up, Raid is downstairs playing by itself. I had a lot to do today. But I actually was up during a fair proportion of the day. Like, I got up around 1 or 2 p.m. and saw some daylight. I did have to take a nap a little later, but I feel a little better about that. I also did dishes yesterday, I think it was, which also makes me feel better. Anyway, this game is winding down with both armies ready to, getting very close to collapse. And we're at the start of a new turn, which means French command and French rally. We are not on an hourly turn. We just had one. That makes sense. I do have French cav who can put a vice on these poor cav. I think the cav everywhere else are being screened by the infantry on both sides. There might be one here. No, that's an infantry commander. It doesn't necessarily mean it, but it is in this case. I have a disordered cav here, a somewhat weaker one here, which is going to project its charge. It's about the same size as the Prussians, higher morale, etc. These guys back here could also charge. I see no reason for it. I'm not particularly that interested in the actual fight. I'm more interested in disrupting the cav. If the fight has to happen, I can do it. But I actually don't have to. But I'll probably do it if he stays on that low ground. But I'm interested in disrupting him, forcing him to take a little bit of withdrawal fire, or whatever it's called in this game. Opportunity fire, I think, and such. That's all I'm doing there. There's no new commands I'm throwing out. Nobody can move. Deactivate. That's the word I'm looking for. I want to say demobilize, but if I have to reach, I don't make that error. And so I guess it's rally time, which will bring the French a little closer to not routing, because they're in a lot of trouble. It's not going to help them. They're one routing unit, which is I don't know how big. That's only one strength point, yeah. So I'm at like 18. So I really do have to worry. The Prussians are pretty low too, and they have more routed units, but neither one's over. There were a couple more routed units back here. It didn't total up to the 18. Okay? Pretty sure I was aware of them when I did count, because one seemed all wrong to me. That's going to put me, ammo replenished, to the Allied movement, essentially. Movement's gotten to be such a pain at this point in the game, but hey, I'm up here for a reason. Don't forget, the Prussian cav trying to get out of here took a hit, recorded, and had to, actually was able to flee the zone with their retreat. They were almost certain to be disordered. Let me see, 2, 4, 5. Yeah, okay. That puts them out of the charge zone so they can't get hit now. I don't know what else to do with these guys. Like, oh boy. Ran into some of the problems with the unit designations being essentially unreadable, but also pretty hard, even if it wasn't on the Prussians. This is a 14th brigade unit, or division, I guess. Yeah, I guess the Prussian units are divisions. 14th is back here, 1, 2, 3, 4. He's actually in command. He sort of lucked into it, but he moved thinking he was part of this command, which is the 16th. They all are numbered similarly, and yeah. I just realized, yeah, I got my commander in place. Excellent. But, yeah, it's a fucking mess. I think the Prussians want to break off. I really do. Because I'm looking at the point totals, and if I can rally those units in it, first of all, I'm close to breaking because of all the routes. If I can rally those units, then this is correct. And then if we look at time, okay, the French are 18 divided by 9, which is 2. The Prussians are 34 divided by 12, which is almost 3. If I can pull back, maybe deactivate a couple of beat up brigade or divisions or whatever, because the Prussian units are definitely divisions, then I think the French will end up hitting the limit earlier, which puts this game in a weird situation. Like, the French can't stay on the map any longer unless they attack the Prussians, unless they start causing damage, because the other alternative, of course, is if they can also get away and deactivate units. But I don't know. But anyway, I think the Prussians want to withdraw from this combat. We may end up in a situation where both sides are just fine. Just let the battle end here. This is something of of an odd situation. The Prussians being on the map, fighting the French after the Anglo-Allied army's been defeated. It's an edge case to the game that I'm really not sure. Like, I feel like the victory conditions are kind of fraying at the edges on this one. That's all. I'm not going to hold it too much against them. But I'm actually, if both armies fall back, that's actually a pretty rational response. Problem with a withdrawal, for example, I'm pulling these guys out of here. Now, they weren't in contact with the enemy, at least not close enough contact, so it's no big deal. So they're able to get out. But for this formation here, they're going to be taking fire. And, it feels natural to pull these guys out first, but I've got to really consider how far those guys are going to be able to get. And that may depend on whether or not they're disordered by that fire, or routed for that matter. So I gotta work really carefully. Again, it's probably actually easier than the traffic jam going forward was, to be honest, because I can pull units out of the back line, which I've been doing. But there's some extent of, I really do have to understand where the front line is going to end up. This is pretty much the Prussian positioning after their withdrawal. I'm leaving that skirmisher up there. If I get the advantage, I get to shoot. Otherwise, I'm probably dead, but I'm probably dead if I try to walk away. So he's just stuck there in that fire, and I can do that because I'm within range of infantry. This line pulled back, took a couple of casualties, recorded. I'm going to have to do that calf charge. He's just going to move forward 3 spaces, disorder. And then we'll get to, I guess, the reciprocal fire. Now, there is some French artillery that can fire. There's Prussian artillery that's unlimbering to help protect in case the French come surging forward hard. They might want to put pressure on these units. They might want to put some pressure here, but they don't want to put too much pressure, because if they come out and get a face full of grape shot, they're not going to like that. Now, sorry, I'm out of tea, so I'm not going to do the fire until I come back up, whenever that is. But you might say, hey, you could probably just call it here. And yeah, honestly, I probably could. The French do not have enough oomph to push too hard. And I could just say, look, if we agree, that this is our situation, let's save ourselves a lot of hassle. The points are not going to be influenced that much by whatever differential happens here. And as long as the French don't pursue, they're not going to break. But I think they are going to pursue to some degree, at least send some skirmishers forward to provide some harassing fire. Skirmishers have an advantage and will be able to pick off a few more points of Prussians. And it's kind of cool to see this situation. I don't think I've seen many games in which the victory conditions themselves more or less dictate, you know what? These two armies are too tired to fight. If you think about going to a game that happened at the same time, Terrible Swift Sword up there, these counters I'm using, of course, you basically have very little reason to stop fighting as long as you have any units that can still grind into the enemy. If you look at something like Last Chance for Victory, I did call that in a situation kind of like this, where I'm like, yeah, I don't think the two armies really want to fight. I think first of all, the Confederates were in a situation where they had to pull back into a position, I believe, if I recall correctly, and a number of other different types of games that I have. Usually, They carry the fighting out too much, and I feel like the Army morale levels here have put it to a point where it's clear you are going to, as the Prussians, lose more points by continuing fighting. Even though you got a slight advantage over the French in morale, your army will break if it keeps pressing. And they're at the point where they can offer the French, look, you know, I think if I keep sort of in contact with you, your army is going to collapse before mine does. But I'm not sure that's actually the case. It's kind of hard to get out of here. The French can put kind of a relatively small force, just a few brigades, and thus not pay a lot. And by the way, the Prussians are paying by the division, whereas the French are paying by the brigade or something like that, which is a little weird. I assume it balances out in the wash, but yeah, those Prussian units are really, really big. So taking any given Prussian unit offline is taking a lot of strength points out of the battle. But the French could keep things posted up here and move other units back a little bit, deactivate those other units. But of course, they cannot afford to take many casualties. So I kind of don't feel like they can press too much. So I think what's going to just come out of this is a draw in terms of the fight between the Prussians and the French. And then, you know, you could try to say, well, look, you know, the Prussians lost more points than the French did. So even in this sub-battle here, the Prussians were defeated. But it wasn't a major part. Like, it wasn't something the equivalent of what happened on the rest of the map, where the Allied army was badly defeated, to tell you the truth. Overall, then you come to the conclusion that, yeah, Napoleon wins Waterloo, but it's not, you know, an overwhelming victory, right? It would have been if the Prussians don't show up. And you could certainly say all that. The thing is, I kind of like to see this withdrawal happening, so I'm going to go a couple more turns rather than just kind of project out what I think is almost certain to happen. Because there's not a lot of games that give me this opportunity to watch two armies kind of staggering away from each other in this way. Back up here, it's going to be about 4 in the morning on a Wednesday, I think. I don't know, I can't keep track of time anymore. Anyway, the reciprocal artillery fire phase, they were really just artillery here. Now, this is weird, and a screw up that I regularly have because it's hard to tell which artillery have ammo and which don't without pawing through the opponent's stacks or whatever, which just feels goofy. So I ended up shooting this gun, and after hitting the crew, I found out something that honestly I didn't realize with either side. The Prussians moved that gun up there to help defend themselves against any advance. Oh fuck, I shouldn't have done that. And the French fired at it. Now, normally I check before I move a gun and unlimber it or anything. But I just assumed it had ammo. I don't know why. Anyway, the crew got killed. Too bad. The French certainly don't mind wasting the ammo on it. The Prussians probably shouldn't have moved there, but the hell with it. There was also a skirmisher here which also got killed. So a couple of points. The Prussians had no fire coming back. We're at Allied command and rally, and then the French movement. I don't think there's any cav going. These guys are facing the wrong way. We're pulling the cav back behind the infantry again. It may take a place to try to protect the infantry. But honestly, the cav is going to be more on the flanks and the infantry plunging through the woods and these buildings and everything as they try to get away, so that on the next turn, on the next hourly turn, they can they can deactivate. If we make it that far, I don't think we will. I think we're seeing enough of the disengagement, and then I just don't see having the gasoline to keep going. The Prussian army's too weak to make an attack. The French army's too battered. The Prussian army's just too weak. I mean, what comes onto the field here, and it may be the fatigue and the marching and all that, but its morale is just too shitty. I don't know if it's all made up of landwehr or, but you know, about a third of it is usable. Which means every unit has tons of, or every command, division, whatever, has, you know, like 6 units that are crap and 3 that are decent. And of the 3 that are decent, 1 can be converted into skirmishers, and I've already done that with some of them. It's just an ugly situation. Oh, we got reciprocal infantry fire too. I forgot about that. Okay, who gets it? The French go first. I'll fire that big stack of guns, which actually can hit on a 5 and 6. A big stack of skirmishers. Ooh, I actually couldn't have even shot that gun. Let me fix that. This would have had to die first, and it did. And we'll put the crew back on that gun, and just call it even there. I would have fired the ammo anyway, because again, we're trying to withdraw as well. We look at our points and we're like, yeah, I can't see fighting this out. Although it's getting pretty close now. We're about 18 to 30, so 12 points apart. But I think both armies are withdrawing. Hey, you know, I don't think we're going to see anything of any interest. I think I'm going to call it here. Go down and play raid manually instead. So, what have we gotten? I'm just looking at it, and I'm like, if the 2 armies aren't going to come back together and hit, the French on their movement could move forward. I just don't think it's going to do much. Screw up. I just don't feel like playing out this withdrawal. I mean, it's just going to be the French skirmishers coming forward. And there are a lot of them, though. There are enough it could change the dynamics here. Because if the Prussians are beat up enough, the French might just follow. All right. I convinced myself. We'll keep going. Yeah. So let me do the Allied forces, mainly rally. Funny, I catch myself making stupid mistakes, like I have disordered counters in the woods. They don't mean anything. You're disordered anyway if you're in the woods. I mean, it doesn't do any harm, but it does confuse the issue for me. I don't know. There was another. Oh yeah, I had a skirmisher who has a leader on top of him for no good reason, because he had a routed marker, and I didn't want to peek underneath. I thought, oh, that's a unit. Nah, it's a skirmisher. Oh well. All right. Time for the French to surge forward and start causing the Prussians some problems. Surge forward just with their skirmishers. And what's weird about this is I'm going to be trying to pull units off the field or out of the way to fall back in order to deactivate them, so I don't pay as much. But I got to keep some units at the front, and that's going to be kind of a complicated and annoying little dance. Right, so this is the great push forward by the skirmishers. Now I do have to have lines in place. I've got part of the 24th Corps over here, 20th Division, 4th Corps here. Sorry, 6th Corps. A little bit of the 1st Corps over here, although some of it's retreating. These guys are kind of in a weird state. I had to get them together for their leader. I don't think I want them to remain at the front, but if the Prussians turn and fight, they're kind of a reserve right now. Likewise, I've got units here of 1st Corps that are running away. Get that artillery out of there too. I didn't move that. yet. I didn't move these skirmishers yet. Okay. Just catching up a few things. Got somebody rallying over here to the commander of the 1st Corps. He's the only guy who could reach it because it's out of it's out of that 8 hex range, so he was able to move at double speed to get there. I'm still committing those cav here. Probably too much. I probably should break one of these out of here, but I don't know which one. I don't know. Artillery don't really count against my brigade effect. Exhaustion. This guy, I don't know what to do with him. He'll move forward. There's not going to be any shock, but the French are putting some definite pressure with their skirmishers. Obviously, the game just doesn't support like regulars shocking militia skirmishers. They fall apart. It's a horrible, horrible idea. We captured a gun that reduced the Prussians a little bit, and we're going to have some shots come in. And I mean, the Prussians may actually break from trying to retreat, but I think they were in the worst position out of the two sides, even though they had more morale. And that'll put me out another turn to 6:30 p.m. And we will break because I got Raid playing by itself up there. Should be there. Now here I am awake for some reason on Wednesday morning. The fog is still there. It's not heavy like it was this morning. Anyway, I figure I'll squeeze in another segment. I slept for a couple hours and now I'm awake again. I could have gone back to bed right away. I mean, but I convinced myself, hey, if I'm awake, I got to come up here. I thought about going for a walk, but it's fucking cold out. You know, it's about freezing, and I know, I've become a wuss, but the cold air hurts my lungs now. Laying down a couple of different calf charges here. The first one I looked at was this one. I'm like, he can just dodge right out of that. So I overlapped it with another one, actually trying to catch that unit. And it doesn't really hurt me. If I'm going to commit these cav forward, I probably want a chance to hit that. I'm at a big advantage. And this thing here is disordered in the woods, so it's not going to present too much of a threat right now. So the disengagement did not go well for the Prussians. These 3 units routed trying to pull away. One of them's an artillery, no big deal. But there's 2 big stacks of infantry there. The hits we took us down to 20. This cav routed trying to get out. Actually reacting to the cav charge. I think I may have something else that's routed, but I'm not sure. But anyway, it added up to more than 20 points by a little bit, and the Prussian army has just broken. Now, I don't know how much that means the French want to pursue, because if they take enough hits, they too will break, and then it becomes a race to to leave the map. The French are better off letting the Prussians leave at this point, and just harrying them a little bit with the skirmishers as they've been doing. And you can see these are all hits. Everywhere where there's an ammo depleted, that means the French hit. They may have hit a few more, but yeah. The Prussians tried to create a skirmisher line here to protect a couple of their forces, but they're going to have some real trouble. And, I mean, the Anglo-Allied army isn't off the map yet, right? So this could take most of the game to get them off. Mainly because it's really, really hard to move back through these woods. It's easy once you're routing, but now that they're broken, they will not rally, even though I moved forces there. That puts me on the shock phase. I have that cav shock coming in there. Yeah, I don't know if it's worth doing now. You know, it's kind of a, I got the advantage, but I've got the advantage everywhere, and am I better off saving the potential hits? I think I'll make the charge just for shits and giggles, really. Well worth doing. It was an auto route. Oh, I'm looking at firepower. The Prussians didn't lay down any artillery. The French, I don't think theirs can see any of the Prussians. So we'd be going directly to the infantry fire phase. Might as well, I guess. Kind of a little reticent about it because my pipe's almost dead, but. And the French charge was entirely successful, routing and destroying those units, causing a few more hits. However, the French took a fair amount of fire here. They took like 3 hits, 4 hits maybe. I don't know. 3 is probably right. Maybe 2. I don't know. I can count the ammo depletions. It looks like 3. Thought I was at 18. Let me say I probably missed one. There's a high chance that I miss recording stuff on there. How much, I don't know. I mean, you know, but it's almost assured that these numbers are better for the armies involved than they should be, which again, it feels like the armies broke a little too easily. It feels almost preordained that if the French attack across the line, they're going to break that Anglo-Allied army. That's my feeling. Of course, they might not be in good shape for the Prussians, but yeah, we're seeing they're holding up here. Yeah, and the Prussians also took a couple more hits as well. And that'll get me to the Allied command phase. Not a hell of a lot I can do there anymore. Not that there was really. Well, rally is where I really lose something because my routed units can't rally anymore. They're just going to start streaming off the map. And I should actually reduce the points to count them in because they're forever frozen now. So yeah, there were like 31 units or 31 strength points that are broken after this. So we're 14 over the line already at this point, counting the routed units. And again, the routed units aren't coming back, so it's fine if I record them now. So the French barely survive and hold on long enough to break the Prussian army. And at this point, maybe it's time to quit. I gotta put some thought into it. I'll probably finish up this turn and then consider it. Because the thing is, yes, the French are going to be able to run up the score against the Prussians. Even if I just leave them alone. Leave them alone. I end up with I'm able to demobilize or deactivate my units, not pay this 9 points out of my 15. Yeah, I think leaving them alone is probably the best move. And not even pursuing with the skirmishers the way I've been doing. But yeah, on the next turn, I'll be paying 9. But then I'll be able to deactivate most of my forces. So I think the French are going to retire. The Prussians are going to withdraw. So I think we're actually kind of at the end. I can kind of figure out how many turns of Prussians moving off the map there's going to be. But that's going to be a fairly small amount. So let's take a look at what the numbers actually represent right now. So I've got 195, say about 210 right now to 19. Obviously the French won, but how much? How big a victory was this? Does it tell me? What did I say? 210? More than 200 is an overwhelming victory. So, yeah. Had I been snapped by the Prussians, though, it could have swung to something very close to a marginal, or maybe not even, you know. I might have even lost, because I had a long way to go to get a lot of my units off the board. And, yeah. All right, so we have an overwhelming French victory. And that's, again, a thing. It doesn't feel like... Let's say the French did break as well. We're not talking about an even situation here. The French are gonna. It's still gonna be a major victory, because the French are gonna be spending about 50 points to get themselves off the board. Now, they don't have to do a damn thing to get the deactivated units off the board. The activated units, I think, have to leave if they do that. But yeah, we would still be looking at least a substantive victory, probably a decisive. I'm not sure. I don't think I'm allowed to deactivate a broken army's brigades on the map. But there's nothing that forces me to leave the map. And if both armies are broken, which I think would have been the only other possibility, it's possible the Prussians could have continued their attack and maybe broken the French along with them. But by withdrawing, they seem to have sealed their doom. Well, that's that. There's always something special about finishing these big guys. You know, I don't know what it is. There's something special about playing them. It's got nothing to do with anything except the sheer size of the game for me. The size and the length, and, you know, it feels like, I don't know if it feels like I've accomplished something, but it feels like, I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, it's made such an impact. You know, it makes a big impact on your life and everything to play something of this size, even of this size. Now, for me, it's not that huge a deal to be up here, taking up 4 tables. But at one point in my life, it sure the hell would have been a big deal to use up this much table space. And when I do the huge guys, it's still a big deal. You know, when I fill up my living room or whatever that is, the main hall. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I kind of picked up a house here that it's not, you know, as ridiculously large as where my dad's living, which is fine. But, and where my mom used to live before she croaked. But it's got some similarities to it. Lots and lots of wood everywhere, lofts, you know. There's a loft on theirs. And also, the second floor kind of looks over onto the first floor. It's not a loft, it's finished, but it's got, you know, hallways that just look down in, like a gallery looking down on the main area. And a big open main area and everything. It's about, you know, 3 times as big as this, because it's a fucking barn that they moved. But yeah, in a lot of ways, there's some similarities. It's funny, though, because this house was in my dreams, at least parts of this, like the railing here and the spiral staircase and stuff like that, and the big open window. That's something that my folks' house did not have. They have big windows, but not just this huge glass to let all the heat out or whatever. And there's things that are definitely different, you know, a lot of things that are different, but it is kind of neat that I was attracted to something that was very similar. Now, my mom basically designed that, you know, how the barn was going to look on the interior. Yeah, my dad had input, but he's not as big a deal in that kind of thing. But yeah, the openness and stuff like that was all her. But yeah, it's just kind of weird. And like, you know, my kitchen is connected to that main area, just kind of open to it via countertop, whatever. Obviously, my place is even more of a mess, but I'm sure my dad keeps the place relatively clean. My mom did not. She's was more like me in that sort of way, and in a lot of ways, I sort of have taken the bad points of both of them. Anyway, enough of reflection. Yeah, I mean, I had fun with this. I may not agree with everything that the system does, but, you know, when you consider this is... Now, I would have fun with TSS too, right? But when you consider back to the era that this was from, this was one of the first... not the first, you have the Labatt system showing up before this, but this and TSS were SPI's first real attempts to really take a minis type design and put it into, you know, a battlefield. And they chose to do it with some pretty big battles as well, which, you know, both of them were games that... TSS was definitely something that I was like, oh, I have to have that. This one less so because of Ney versus Wellington and how much trouble I had with that. But I'm growing a little warmer on the system as I play it. It's a little too cumbersome in a few too many ways, but it's better than Labatt. It doesn't match the NBS for me in terms of historical accuracy, but look, you know, NBS wasn't finished until, I don't know what, like 2010 or something like that. Like that 3.0 series, I get the feeling it was somewhere close to 2010. You know, and you're looking at like a 40-year difference, well, not quite, 35-year difference in time for revisions and whatnot. The original NBS was kind of bullshit in terms of how it handled things. I still had fun with it. And then the Viva la Emperor, which unfortunately is the best thing out there still producing. Now, how is this? I don't think this holds up to those for me because it doesn't cover command in the same way. And it's also just way too finicky in terms of how you handle things. But, you know, apparently they're publishing another game in this system, which I think is just purely a mistake because parts of this system are Waterloo specific. It's not a system that's meant to transfer. All right, I'll probably say those same things in the review, but anyway, I just wanted to say something to end up. What about the battle itself? We saw the French come in, I think, pretty hard, and the Brits come forward to make sure that they could secure the Hougoumont. Successes over here, not so much over here for the Brits. And I think the increased level of commitment that I saw from here and coming forward maybe a little too far here, I think those things doomed the Anglo-Allied army because it's a little weaker than the French army. It took a little bit more hits. And then the outflank over here, I think, was actually really key. I think that was really big because it allowed the French, first of all, the French devoted enough of the battle up here that they were able, to increase again the intensity of the overall casualty rates for both sides. But they also got the edge over here. Now they didn't have the edge over on the Huguenot. What happens if the Brits don't come forward? The French still are going to come around with that outflank. The French army will be less beat up when it hits the Prussians, I think. But the Anglo-Allied might be able to last a little bit longer if they don't come down and fight the French over here as successfully as I did. Could have done that just with cav and used those infantry to help solidify this line here. The line never completely collapsed until the army retreated. And then, once it came down to the fight for the Prussians, it looked like it would be a really close thing, and it kind of is. Look, the French were at 15 points. They're pretty damn close to breaking. But the Prussian attack is doomed because two factors. One, them coming out of that woods, not being able to deploy too far outside of the woods, really hurt them. But if they had a reasonable army, it wouldn't have been that bad. But their army has so much shit in it. And then the game system intervenes by saying, oh, let's give the Prussians a bunch of units that they can't do anything with until they take a casualty. Now, with the decent ones, you can, the line quality units, and they have a couple of them in each division, and then one elite unit, which can break down entirely. You can strip a skirmisher off each one, dropping its morale a little bit, so it's a shit unit now, but at least it can, form a line in a hex, right, without having to do those stupid extended lines, because those extended lines are incredibly cumbersome and really, really painful. That's another gripe I have. I'll go into that again in more detail. But, yeah. And if anything, what the points I counted right now, the Prussians are going to lose a lot more points than that. How much are the French going to lose? I don't think enough for them to break. Although, conceivably, and this is where the game gets stupid, the Prussians could actually continue pressing an attack to try to break the French after they've broken. There's nothing that requires that they leave the map. There's just, you lose a few more victory points each hour, but there's also, their units are losing a point of morale for every turn that they're on the board. So any effectiveness drops, but they would still be able to generate fire with half their units each turn. Half the units that they have engaged. The other half are just fucked because they're just going to run away as soon as they get hit, right? But half the battlefield will be their advantage where they get first shot, almost invariably. And that means that they would actually probably be able to dredge the French down into breaking as well. I think that would still, because of the fact that I get to hold the territory and whatnot, it would still wind up being at least that 200-point advantage. So I don't think there's any real great advantage to doing that. But it does feel like this kind of gamey, weird, stupid thing that you can do to at least say, well, I broke the French too, but whatever. All right, we are going to load this up, and I don't know when I'll come for a review. I'm sleepy right now.